Lorna Shore. Not exactly a band that sounds very metallic, but let's not stick to that. Now the thing here is, when I just happened to got this album like yesterday, that is day before this video is actually being made, I was pretty confused. Like, what is this band and why this is in my box of Lorna Shore. Immortal is the album that we have here for review. To be honest, I was a little bit confused when I got this album day before actually making this video, that is before listening to it for review, and I was pretty confused because I didn't expect this to arrive. And secondly, I was kind of confused because I couldn't even find this on Metal Archives, which, as you should know, is the database for metal albums and metal bands, obviously. But Lorna Shore is not there. And I was figuring out why, because this is Century Media release. Now, of course, they do some other stuff also, not purely metal, but still it's a metal label, and metal-related releases are what they do. But Lorna Shore missing there. So I did a little bit Googling, and I found out, okay, this album is already out, and there's no reason why it wouldn't be there, unless it's somewhat non-metallic. So a little bit more research, then I put this CD on my player, and it kind of started to make sense. While it's definitely in my books metal, it's also somewhat what we would call deathcore, and as such, I know it's gonna give some rash to some people. That is, people will have allergic reactions because of this album, because it's not purely traditional metal. Now, whether or not this counts as metal album is beyond this scope. I mean, with this video anyway, it's a review, but I kind of find it annoying whether or not I like particular band, that some bands which are clearly very metallic, but kind of too modern for some people, they're not labeled as metal. Now, I'm gonna talk about a little bit more when we go through this album. So here we have an album called Immortal by this New Jersey, United States based band. Now, first clue, in addition to not finding this one on Metal Archives, not at least during the time which I'm doing this video, which is, by the way, the very last day of January 2020. The other sign, or indication, which kind of might suggest these guys are not typical metalheads, is that they don't really look like that metalheads to me. Now, obviously, people can look wherever they want, and I know baldhead is not even the typical metal outfit if you want to talk about hairstyle and whatnot, but these guys look more like they're coming from, say, different scenes, more hardcore-ish, which is then again the base for all kind of metalcore, deathcore, and whatnot. And actually, this probably is the reason why this album doesn't exactly sound very typical metal. Not that it is pure typical deathcore even in style, it's more like this album is kind of a combination of symphonic black metal, yes, I said it. It's also quite slam death metal with breakdowns and whatnot, gent parts, and it's obviously definitely deathcore, kind of a metalcore. And all these different, let's call them subgenres for the sake of talking about music here, are kind of making this triangle, you know? So if we have like this symphonic metal part, symphonic black metal part here, akin to Dimmu Borgir's later ventures, then we have death metal here, and we have this metalcore here, and they all make this triangle, okay? And now these are all kind of blended together, kind of forced into this triangle that you just have to adapt with each other and then make these bonds forcefully or otherwise. Now, for some people, this is just like, hey man, it's totally normal. You know, modern day metalcore, maybe you're just too old school or too old to understand this kind of youth music. And maybe that is kind of true, because I feel like I am old when I don't fully understand this kind of music. But again, there is nothing wrong with understanding this kind of music in the sense that, yes, I get where these guys are coming from. They are using modern symphonic black metal elements there, and you know, in that sense, they sound much like they borrowed some ideas and ways of execution from bands such as Dimmu Borgir, and mostly Dimmu Borgir. I don't find any other bands having this kind of stuff here, but there are other bands, maybe not in so much black metal, but in extreme metal, which has or have these orchestral elements, choirs, and kind of a majestic output. And then we have these, really massive modern sound breakdowns and oh, it's so heavy. And it makes me feel like, okay, these guys are creating some kind of a new hybrid, a mutation, if you will. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but obviously it requires a lot from the audience to just absorb all these different ideas and elements. Now, combining death metal and black metal is one thing, and usually it works rather okay. But it's not like a marriage made in heaven, or hell in that respect. But also, when you put symphonic elements, it kind of retracts death metal from it, because it's not really working out that well. It's like you have those two magnets in wrong way, and you're just trying to put them together, and it doesn't really work that way. Now, putting deathcore into this equation makes it even more complicated. It's like layer after layer after layer, like a too big a sandwich or burger. You just can't put in your mouth at once. You just want to put it into pieces. Like, okay, this layer number 1, layer number 2, and so forth. You get the idea. Now, it's kind of clear that these guys have a lot of talent when it comes to playing the instruments. They're wonderful guitar leads here and there, and the drummer is kind of skilled with, how they execute massive line of bass drums and all that stuff. And those orchestral parts, well, I cannot really blame the band for using them. They are nicely executed and they have these wonderful ideas. But how to put all these different ideas together so it makes sense, well, that's, in my opinion, where the band kind of fails. Not badly maybe, but it makes this album kind of hard to enjoy. Let me give you another food metaphor. Let's consider this is a hamburger. We have the layer number 1. This is maybe a hamburger, roll or bun, whatever you call it. Then you put some beef on it. Okay, still decent. How about some chocolate bar? How about some oatmeal? And you're like, wait a second, you don't just put chocolate bar in your hamburger. Like, at least remove the meat or remove the chocolate. And what is that oatmeal doing there? And now you get my idea. There are too many different ideas, in my opinion, to make this wonderful album. Now, I get some of my colleagues, yes, I read a couple of reviews of this, wanted to say this is like 5 out of 5 stars or 9 out of 10 or something like that. So they were really, really enthusiastic about this album, and I kind of get it. If you're into blending these kind of modern ideas with deathcore and black metal, and you're like, wow, man, these guys are creating something really new and fascinating. Sure, if that's your cup of tea, Immortal is gonna be mind-blowing in an album. It's one of those albums that you're gonna be saying, 2020 really killed it. It really nailed it. But for the others, maybe I'm too old school, I don't know. For me, it's like, just leave 1/3 out of it, and it would be just fine. If this was like a, symphonic black metal album with some death metal ideas, doesn't matter if you have those growly vocals or shrieky vocals or those kind of deathcore vocals, maybe it would work. Or if it would be just like combination of that modern death metal and metalcore, kind of a deathcore with some little twists of black metal, maybe it would work. But now it feels like it has too much stuff on its plate. Yes, the production is bombastic, it's majestic, but then again also a little bit kind of plastic. It's kind of like lacking the dynamics of how old school sound. There's nothing organic, it's just like machine made. It can be working for the favor of this album, or it can be like totally the element that makes you have this allergic reaction. Now, it's kind of hard to say to which kind of audience Immortal actually appeals to. Some of you will just praise it and call it wonderful album, the best of January 2020. And some of you are like, this is utter crap. This is totally the kind of modern metal which makes you just feel pity for it. So, kind of hard to say what will you expect, how will you treat it and welcome it. in my opinion, it's kind of a decent thing. My opinion is that it could be a lot worse, but it also could be a lot better. So I'm not exactly hating this. I'm not gonna diss it, but I don't find myself to be the right person to fully enjoy it and fully immerse in it. So tricky album in so many ways, but I am sure that once these guys kind of figure out later on how their album was and take a little bit distance from it, maybe they will come to the next level, so to speak. But then again, I might be totally wrong. And that's the beauty of creating art. Now, thank you for watching this too lengthy review. Hope you have a good time with this album, and if you don't, well, too bad. Have your comments on the box below, and I'll get back to